Today we're talking about electric bicycles. A buddy of mine picked up one of those budget e-bikes last year thinking all of them were basically the same, and he regretted it fast. The range was unreliable, the motor struggled on even mild hills, and the build quality felt sketchy at best. Because here's the thing, most electric bicycles are built to hit a price point, not to deliver a great riding experience. Which is why today, I'm breaking down the electric bicycles that completely break that mold with smarter design and features that make them truly next level. So right out of the gate, let's talk about the Specialized Globe Haul ST, because this is exactly the kind of bike my buddy should have bought. It's a compact cargo e-bike that proves you don't need some massive long-tail setup to haul serious weight. This thing carries 419 pounds, but rides like a regular bike, just one that happens to have a punchy 700-watt rear hub motor. And that motor? It delivers torque in a way that feels smooth and controlled. No jerky surges when you're loaded down with groceries or kids on the back. It hits 28 miles per hour in pedal assist, which makes it pretty fast for city commuting, and those 20-inch wheels with fat, puncture-resistant tires give it this playful, nimble handling that I've heard people call rocket-like. The 772-watt-hour battery claims 60 miles unloaded, but realistically, you're looking at 25 to 40 when you're pushing max payload or cruising at top speed. Trade-offs? It's 86 pounds, so lifting it isn't happening, and there's a slight motor lag from stops. But for around $3,000, it's one of the most versatile cargo haulers that still feels like an actual bike. Now, if you're actually replacing a car, for short commutes that is, then the Tern GSD S10 is what you should be looking at. This is a compact longtail with a Bosch cargo line mid-drive that puts out 85 Newton-meters of torque. And here's why that matters. Mid-drive motors sit at the cranks, so they leverage your gears instead of just spinning the wheel. You can haul 463 pounds, 2 kids, groceries, whatever, up actual hills without that struggling, overheating feeling cheaper motors give you. The 750 watt-hour battery gets you 50 to 80 miles depending on load, and the whole bike folds down to fit elevators or tight storage. Just keep in mind that the e-bike starts at $6,000 base and around 72 pounds empty. But if you need a bike that genuinely replaces short car trips with confidence, this handles like something purpose-built. Here's something most people don't expect at this price point. The Aventon Ramblas, a legit mountain bike that happens to be electric, and not the other way around. It runs Aventon's own mid-drive, putting out 100 Newton-meters, which is serious grunt for technical climbs and rocky terrain. It's got a 708 watt-hour battery that gives you 50 to 60 real-world miles on mixed trails, and even more if you're not constantly hammering it in turbo mode. What makes this different is the RockShox fork with 120 millimeters of travel and a dropper post, features you'd normally see on bikes twice the price. The trade-off is weight, about 54 pounds, and that coil fork isn't as adjustable as an air shock. The motor's also louder than premium options, kind of a mechanical whir under load. But for $2,700, you're getting something that actually handles descents with confidence instead of just crawling up hills. The Trek FX+1 is proof that sometimes simpler is smarter. This is a rear hub motorbike that does one thing really well. Gets you to work without drama. That 500-watt hub spins you up to 28 miles per hour with pedal assist. But here's the kicker. It's also got a thumb throttle that'll take you to 20 without pedaling at all. Perfect for those dead leg moments at stoplights or when you're just done. The 520 watt-hour battery is smaller than what we've talked about so far, giving you 33 to 52 miles depending on how hard you push it. But Trek's app tells you pretty accurate range predictions instead of wildly optimistic guesses. At 49 pounds and $2,000, it's light enough to feel nimble and cheap enough to not stress about locking up outside. Still, if I had to be nitpicky, the battery's non-removable, so you're dragging the bike inside to charge, and that rigid fork makes rough pavement feel harsher than it should. Another model from Aventon, we've got the Level 3, and where this one gets interesting is the stuff you don't see in spec sheets, like GPS tracking built into the app and an electronic wheel lock that works perfectly. This is a commuter bike, designed for people who lock up outside coffee shops and don't want to stress about it. The 720 watt-hour battery pushes 50 to 75 miles in real testing, which is solid, but what stands out is how the torque sensor makes the power feel effortless instead of aggressive. It reads how hard you're pedaling and matches that energy, so you're not getting jerked forward at every stoplight. Also, the suspension fork and seat posts smooth out city pavements surprisingly well. At $1,900, you're getting integrated lights with turn signals, fenders, and a rear rack. But just so you know, it's not built for steep hills or heavy cargo. The motor tops out at 500 watts continuous, so serious climbs will have you working. The Lectric XP 4.0 costs $999 and somehow doesn't ride like it. This is a folding fat tire bike, which usually means compromises everywhere. But the Lectric 4.0 comes added with a torque sensor. That's huge because cheap folding bikes typically feel like on-off switches, but this one really responds to how hard you pedal. The 672 watt-hour battery gets you 40 to 44 miles in actual use, and those 3-inch tires handle pavement, gravel, even light trails without feeling sketchy. You can also fold it down and throw it in a trunk or RV, which opens up riding options most regular e-bikes can't touch. It's just that it weighs around 65 pounds, so folding doesn't mean lightweight, and the suspension is pretty basic. Rough roads will remind you this isn't a $3,000 bike. But for $1,000, you're getting hydraulic brakes, turn signals, and a rear rack that holds 150 pounds, which in my opinion sounds like a pretty good deal. Now, probably the one you've been waiting for, we have the Segway Xyber, is basically a motorcycle that figured out how to stay street legal as an e-bike, and I mean that as a compliment. Dual mid-drive motors peak at 6,000 watts combined, which is absurd. 0 to 20 miles per hour happens in under 3 seconds, and you'll hit 35 miles per hour without breaking a sweat. The full suspension and 5-inch fat tires mean you're floating over potholes and cracked pavement like they don't exist. Now, with the base battery, you're looking at 44 to 60 miles, and if you spring for the dual battery setup, you can push past 100. Here's the problem. It weighs over 90 pounds with dual batteries, so forget about carrying it upstairs or maneuvering it in tight spaces. And that power? It's legitimately intimidating if you're not used to it. At $3,500 to $5,000, this isn't for commuters who need practicality. This is for people who want an experience. Speaking of which, our next bike takes refinement to another level. But before we get to my final 2 absolute favorite electric bicycles on this list, if you're into no BS breakdowns like this, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Not ready for that? Totally fine. Just drop a like instead, because that's what helps me know this kind of content is actually useful. If you've ever taken a train to work, the Brompton Electric G line suddenly makes perfect sense. This is Brompton's take on what happens when you scale up their iconic folding design. Bigger 20-inch wheels, wider tires, and hydraulic disc brakes instead of rim brakes. The 250-watt rear hub is quiet and gives you just enough push to keep pace in city traffic, topping out at 20 miles per hour. The battery lives in a front bag that clips off in seconds, which is brilliant for security, but makes the front end noticeably heavier when you're carrying it folded. Real-world range sits around 20 to 40 miles depending on terrain and assist level. Not huge, but enough for most commutes. At 42 pounds, it folds down small enough to stash under a desk or bring on transit. Its $4,500 to $5,500 price tag, though, is steep when non-folding e-bikes offer more range and power for less. But if your commute involves mixed transport and you've got the money for it, this folding mechanism is regarded as one of the best in the industry. And here's the final bike, the Bonnell 775MX, which honestly isn't trying to be an e-bike at all. This is a full suspension electric dirt bike that happens to have pedals. The CYC X1 Pro mid-drive puts out 6,000 watts peak with 280 newton meters of torque, which is legitimately terrifying the first time you twist the throttle. It'll hit 37 miles per hour and climb trails that would stop anything else we've talked about today. The 1,300 watt-hour battery sounds massive, until you realize you're only getting 18 to 37 miles because of how much power it's burning. With 200 millimeters of front travel and downhill tires, this thing is built for jumping, bombing descents, and technical terrain, not pedaling to the grocery store. At 75 pounds and off-road only legal status, it's useless for commuting. But if you want something that rides the line between e-bike and dirt bike, For $5,000 to $6,500, nothing else comes close to this level of raw capability. And that's the list. Some electric bicycles that actually know what they are doing. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.